My husband found out our kids aren't his, but that wasn't the biggest shock. I've been married for 12 years. We have 3 beautiful kids, a cozy home, and from the outside, the perfect family. But for the last decade, I've been hiding the biggest secret of my life. None of our children are biologically my husband's. They're from my childhood best friend, Daniel. And yes, Daniel is gay. Before you start judging me, let me explain. When my husband, Mark, and I got married, we spent years trying to have children. Tests, clinics, medications, even IVF, nothing worked. I was emotionally wrecked. Mark kept saying it didn't matter, that we could adopt, but I could see the sadness in his eyes every time we walked past a family at the park. Daniel and I had been friends since we were kids. He came out in college, and we'd always had this deep, platonic bond, something closer than siblings. When he saw how heartbroken I was after another failed IVF attempt, he said something I'll never forget. If it's about biology, I'll help you. I'll do it as a friend. At first, I thought he was joking. But he wasn't. We spent weeks talking about it, the ethics, the consequences, the secrecy. He didn't want to ruin my marriage, and I didn't want to lie to Mark. But at that point, I was so desperate to feel like a mother, I convinced myself it was the right thing. That Mark didn't need to know, because he would be their real dad anyway. Daniel donated his sperm quietly, and 6 months later, I was pregnant. Our first son was born, and Mark cried harder than I've ever seen him cry. He called our baby a miracle. That word still haunts me. 2 years later, we did it again. And again. 3 children. All Daniels. Mark never suspected a thing, not even when people would comment that our kids looked nothing like him. He'd laugh it off, proud and protective. But lately, the guilt started to eat me alive. I couldn't sleep. I'd stare at my husband playing with the kids and feel this crushing weight on my chest. Daniel kept telling me, you did what you had to do. You gave those kids love. But I couldn't silence the voice in my head anymore. So last month I decided to tell Mark. I tried to bring it up slowly. I started by reminding him how hard those years were for us, how lucky we were that it worked out. Then I mentioned Daniel, how he'd always been there for me. Mark didn't suspect a thing. He just smiled and said, yeah, Daniel's a good guy. But the more I tried to lead into it, the more terrified I became. Every time I opened my mouth, my throat went dry. I was scared he'd hate me. Scared he'd leave. Then one night, after dinner, I couldn't take it anymore. I told him we needed to talk. We sat in the living room. I remember my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my cup of tea. I said, there's something I need to tell you. It's about the kids. He went pale. What about them? And then I said it. They're not biologically yours. They're Daniel's. The silence that followed felt like a black hole swallowing the room. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just stared at me for what felt like forever. Then he stood up and walked out. He didn't come home for 3 days. When he finally did, he said he needed answers. I told him everything, that Daniel's gay, that there was no affair, that it was just a donation, not betrayal. But Mark said, you lied to me for a decade. You let me live a lie. And that's when the real shock came. He told me he knew. Apparently, 5 years ago, he'd done a DNA test out of curiosity, thinking it was one of those fun ancestry kits. He'd noticed the results didn't match up with his kids' genetics. He didn't say anything because he wanted to see if I would ever tell him. For 5 years, he carried that secret. Pretending everything was normal. Waiting. I asked why he didn't confront me sooner, and he said, because I wanted to see if you loved me enough to tell the truth. He said he'd made peace with it, that the kids are his, no matter what DNA says. But he couldn't forgive the lie. Not yet. We're living separately right now, giving each other space. The kids don't know what's going on. Daniel offered to come over to explain, but I said no. Mark needs time. And just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, Daniel dropped another bomb. He told me he's sick. Stage 3 lymphoma. He said he didn't want treatment at first, but now that he knows his biological kids exist, he wants to fight. For them. I don't know what to do. My husband doesn't trust me. My best friend might die. And my children's world, the world I built on love and lies, is about to collapse. I wanted to be a mother so badly I played God. And now I'm paying the price.